Try to remember your childhood. While other 10-year-olds were crying over scraped knees or worrying about what game to play tomorrow, you were sitting in the living room, holding your breath, listening to
Acts, impressing everyone in the room, or maybe to the quiet one in the corner, the person you almost overlooked, the one who seemed a little distracted, a little distant, perhaps even a little strange? Here's the truth that most people never realize. Genuine, exceptional intelligence rarely announces itself. It doesn't wear a badge or carry a trophy. In fact, the people with the highest IQs often move through the world in ways that confuse, puzzle, or even concern those around them. They forget their phone on the kitchen counter, but can mentally reconstruct a complex argument they read 3 years ago. They lie awake at 2 a.m. not from anxiety, but because their mind refuses to stop connecting dots. They feel things more deeply than anyone suspects and doubt themselves more than almost anyone knows. Today, we're going to go deep into the genuine psychology of people with extremely high IQs. Not the Hollywood version, not the stereotypes, but the real cognitive and emotional landscape of a mind operating at an extraordinary level. And by the end, you may recognize someone you know, or perhaps someone you've never fully understood, yourself. To understand how highly intelligent people think, we first need to understand what makes their brains structurally and functionally different. Research published in the journal Nature Neuroscience has shown that individuals with higher IQs tend to have stronger and more efficient neural connectivity, particularly in regions associated with working memory, abstract reasoning, and executive function. But here's what's fascinating. It's not simply about having more brain activity. In many cases, high IQ individuals actually use their brains more efficiently, achieving complex cognitive tasks with less metabolic effort. Their mental processing is, in a sense, cleaner and more streamlined. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, decision-making, and regulating behavior, is especially active and well-connected in people with high intellectual capacity. This is why they can hold multiple competing ideas in mind simultaneously, weigh consequences several steps into the future, and notice logical inconsistencies that others walk right past. It's not magic, it's architecture. But this same architecture comes with a hidden cost. A brain wired for deep, complex processing doesn't simply switch off. It runs constantly, generating questions, building models of reality, testing assumptions. For many high IQ individuals, this creates an inner world that is extraordinarily rich but also exhausting to inhabit. One of the most widely misunderstood traits of highly intelligent people is their tendency toward what the rest of the world calls overthinking. From the outside, it looks like hesitation, indecision, or anxiety. From the inside, it is something far more structured. Psychologists refer to this as metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. People with high IQs don't just process information. They simultaneously evaluate the quality of their own processing. They ask themselves not just what is the answer, but how confident am I in this answer, and what assumptions am I making to get here? This creates a fascinating paradox. The very thing that makes them intellectually powerful, their ability to see complexity, ambiguity, and nuance, also makes simple decisions feel surprisingly difficult. Choosing a restaurant isn't just about food. It's about considering everyone's preferences, anticipating what could go wrong, evaluating whether this choice reflects the right values. What looks like paralysis to others is actually a high-resolution scan of the situation. Dr. David Perkins of Harvard University has written extensively about what he calls dispositional intelligence, the tendency to be reflective and to think carefully before acting. His research suggests that this disposition, more than raw processing speed, predicts real-world intellectual performance. The person who pauses longest before answering may not be the slowest thinker in the room. They may simply be the one seeing the most. Perhaps no stereotype about intelligent people is more persistently wrong than the idea that they are emotionally detached, cold, robotic, analytical creatures who have traded feeling for thinking. The clinical reality is almost exactly the opposite. Polish psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski developed a groundbreaking theory in the mid-20th century describing what he called psychic overexcitability's heightened responses to stimuli across intellectual, emotional, sensory, psychomotor, and imaginational domains. His decades of research with intellectually gifted individuals revealed that they tend to experience emotions with striking intensity. A piece of music doesn't just sound beautiful to them. It can be physically overwhelming. A story of injustice doesn't just trouble them. It can stay with them for days, demanding to be understood and resolved. This emotional depth is directly connected to the same neural sensitivity that makes them intellectually sharp. Their ability to detect patterns, inconsistencies, and meaning in the world doesn't stop at the boundary between logic and feeling. They bring the same depth of analysis to human experience, to relationships, to moral questions, to suffering. This means they often understand people profoundly and can read a room with uncanny accuracy. It also means that betrayal, disappointment, or cruelty can wound them more deeply than others might expect. Understanding this helps explain why many high IQ individuals seem to carry a certain quiet sadness, or why they need more solitude than others. It isn't coldness. It's the opposite. They feel so much that they sometimes need to step away from the world just to catch their breath. One of the most counterintuitive findings in the psychology of intelligence involves self-assessment. Study after study confirms the same striking pattern. People with genuinely high intelligence consistently underestimate their own abilities, while people with limited competence tend to significantly overestimate theirs. This is a famous Dunning-Kruger effect. It reveals something profound about the nature of knowledge. The more deeply you understand any subject, whether it's physics, philosophy, medicine, or literature, the more clearly you can see the edges of your own understanding. You become acutely aware of how much you don't know, how many questions remain open, how many experts disagree about fundamental questions. Confidence, in this sense, becomes harder to sustain the more you genuinely know. For highly intelligent people, this often manifests as persistent self-doubt, a sense that their achievements are somehow unearned, or that they're about to be exposed as less capable than others believe. Psychologists call this imposter syndrome, and research by Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes, who first formally described the phenomenon, found it to be particularly common among high-achieving, intellectually gifted individuals. The tragedy is that this doubt is frequently mistaken for weakness, both by the person experiencing it and by those around them. In reality, it is a sign of intellectual honesty, the willingness to hold your own beliefs to a rigorous standard and resist the comfortable certainty that comes with knowing less. If there is one single psychological trait that most consistently characterizes people with extremely high IQs, it is not memory, not processing speed, not even the ability to solve complex problems. It is curiosity, specifically, what psychologists call the need for cognition. The need for cognition describes a person's intrinsic motivation to seek out, engage with, and reflect on complex information simply for the pleasure of thinking. For highly intelligent people, this isn't a habit they developed. It feels more like breathing, a fundamental drive that shapes how they move through every day of their lives. Research by psychologists John Cacioppo and Richard Petty, who developed the need for cognition scale in the early 1980s, found that individuals who score highly on this measure consistently outperform others on measures of critical thinking, problem solving, and even resistance to misinformation. They don't just know more facts. They have developed richer, more flexible mental frameworks for making sense of the world. This curiosity explains many of the other behaviors we associate with high intelligence. The late nights spent reading about subjects completely unrelated to their work. The tendency to collect hobbies like languages, instruments, or obscure historical periods. The habit of asking, but why? Long after everyone else has accepted the surface-level answer. They are not showing off. They are simply following the pull of the mind that genuinely cannot stop wanting to understand. Living with an exceptionally high IQ is not the uncomplicated advantage that popular culture often portrays. It is a particular way of being in the world, one defined by depth, sensitivity, restlessness, doubt, and unrelenting drive to understand. These minds see connections where others see coincidences. They feel weight in moments others move through effortlessly. They question what others accept, and they accept uncertainty where others demand false comfort. They are, in the deepest sense, tuned to a different frequency, not better, not worse, but different in ways that can feel profoundly isolating without the right understanding. What the science ultimately reveals is that intelligence, at its most genuine, is not a performance. It is an orientation toward the world, a commitment to depth over speed, to truth over comfort, to questions over easy answers. And perhaps the most important thing to understand about people who carry this kind of mind is simply this: they are not difficult. They are not cold. They are not showing off when they complicate things. And they are not weak when they doubt themselves. They are, quite simply, paying closer attention than almost any one element of the world, to ideas, and to the vast, extraordinary mystery of being alive.